Good evening, everyone. Welcome to High School North, class of 2023 College Planning Night. Thank you for joining us this evening for this presentation. My name is Barbara Gould, and I'm the Director of Counseling, Health, and Wellness in West Windsor-Plainsboro School District. I'm joined here by our lead counselor, Lee Riley, who will be sharing much of the information with you tonight, and some of our counselors as well, who will help to facilitate the question and answer portion later on in the evening. I did want to just take a moment to recognize, Mr. Riley, will you be sharing screen because I'm not able to do so as a panelist?
I will share the screen.
We can't hear you.
Uh-oh.
Okay, all good now.
Okay, you're good? We're good?
Thank you.
Sorry. Yes, I can share the screen.
Great. So I wanted to just take a moment to introduce our High School North counseling team. These are the individuals that help support our students every single day. They go above and beyond. As you can see, several of them are on here tonight to be able to answer your questions. And really, they will be your allies and your support through this college planning process. So without further ado, Mr. Riley will put up the screen in a moment, but I'd like to just take a moment to recognize our counseling team, which consists of Eric Becker, Melissa DeMuth, Chelsea Godowski, Kavita James, Niru Narang, Maria Pyle, and Teresa Riley. A couple of housekeeping things while Mr. Riley shares screen. First, there have been several questions already asking whether this presentation will be recorded and posted, and the answer to that is yes. The presentation will be recorded tonight and it will be posted on the district website. The PowerPoint that will be shared or the Google Slides that will be shared tonight will also be posted on the website tomorrow, and you will have access to it beyond this presentation. So please don't worry. Yes, take notes if you need to, but you also will have access to all of the information afterwards.
Can you see the presentation on the full screen?
I cannot, no.
You cannot. Okay, what are you seeing here? Let's see.
If you make me host again, I think I can share screen and I have it up.
Sure thing. Because I hit share screen.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience. We will get started in just a moment. The other housekeeping thing just to keep in mind, if you could just wait until the end for questions, we will probably answer many of your questions as the presentation goes on. And so if you could reserve your questions for the end, we will have some time towards the end to be able to answer those questions. Oh, now we can see it.
Good. You know, you can tell that it's been a long summer and that I'm just getting back into this. So everybody can thank you for bearing with me. All right, does this look good?
Yes, great.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks, Mrs. Gould, for introducing me. Thanks, everyone, for joining us this evening. Really excited to take this opportunity to share some information, general information about the college application process. It is a process and it will take place for the most part over the first marking period of this year. I let you know that because I don't want you to get too worried about this general stress level over the coming weeks. This will come and go like so many other exciting facets of senior year. So although you will be at times over the next month or two be juggling schoolwork and outside activities and this added endeavor, by mid-November, for most of you, I think you'll be in a good place in terms of having applications into schools, and then we'll enter that next part of senior year. The purpose of this evening, and the reason why we invite students and parents, is so that you both, all parties, are really aware of what structurally is happening and what it takes to set yourself up so that colleges can make admissions decisions for candidates over the winter and spring months. So we want to discuss everybody's roles, first and foremost, the student role in the process, as well as the school role. Your counselors, your school counselors will be here to assist everyone through this role as we go through the process. With that in mind, tonight's presentation is not only posted on the Class of 2023 Google Classroom, but your counselors will also be holding follow-up question and answer sessions for all students over the next week. So if you have any questions tonight, students or parents, really specific to your family, to your particular situation, we would ask that you save those for your individual counselor. They will be taking time over the coming days and weeks to really talk about each individual situation, because everybody is certainly different. So without further ado, let me just get into the overview here. I know that Mrs. Gould echoes this, but really when we go through this process, you just need to trust the process. So this sounds a little bit cliche, but again, this process works for all of our students every year. So while you might be a little bit as a student or as a parent worried or overwhelmed, and that's completely normal, this process will yield positive results if you take your time, if you ask questions, and if you're working as part of a team. Colleges and universities are interested in who students are, and not only what they do, so be sure to reflect what and how and why the activities and experiences on your application make you uniquely you. Of course, we're going to send things like grades and academics information to these schools, but what these schools are trying to get an idea of through your application package is who you are outside of the classroom and what makes you unique. So your application in some way needs to tell that unique story beyond academics. So character, personal skills, what you like to do for fun, and what you would bring to a college campus. A lot of people think of this process as colleges interviewing and looking for the perfect students for their campuses, but you really need to turn that around as we go through the process. And those of you that were kind enough to join us in January for our junior college planning, we talked a little bit about this at that time, but we would like to remind you that really this is an opportunity for you to take a close look at schools and figure out which schools offer you opportunities that will help you reach your full potential. And that will be multiple schools for each individual. We often find that there is not one perfect school for every student. There are a lot of schools that offer very similar, wonderful opportunities, and you can reach your full potential at a lot of different places. But this process is really about identifying which places really work for you in all facets of your candidacy. So you're looking for an environment where you can thrive both academically and of course personally. So an admissions officer is looking to identify students who they think as well are going to thrive academically and socially on their campuses. With that said, we would be remiss if we didn't, of course, let everybody know that most of these colleges are getting thousands of applications, and the process is always going to be imperfect. Therefore, it's impossible to predict what outcomes are going to look like for every individual. Sometimes we are pleasantly surprised by admissions decisions. Sometimes we're, as counselors, really disappointed. But ultimately, if you are looking at multiple schools, you're going to find opportunities that are going to really allow you to have a wonderful experience after you graduate from high school. So that's the part of this process that is really rewarding for us as counselors, and we share in your excitement as you go through this process. All right, so the first steps, and again, this is just the nuts and bolts. So even though I might go through this a little bit fast, this is posted in multiple places in your in Naviance and on Google Classroom. So you have this presentation that you can go through. We've got embedded links in this in this presentation that you can use to navigate Naviance and the Common App, and different helpful videos that we think will make the process a little smoother for you as well. So what should you be doing right now? You should certainly be finalizing a list of schools that you're going to apply to. Why is that important? Well, because a lot of schools have either open deadlines where their applications are being accepted right now, and they are making decisions on candidates throughout the fall. A lot of schools will make decisions within 6 to 8 weeks of students applying. And so it really benefits students who get all of their materials in over the next, let's say, 4 to 8 weeks, because they will receive admissions decisions over the winter. The longer you wait, the longer that admissions decisions will take, and the less time you'll have to really consider what schools that you might attend next fall. So we do encourage you to really be on the earlier side of the process, especially for schools that have open-ended decisions or rolling admissions. So other schools have what's called early action deadlines, and early action deadlines simply mean if you apply by a certain date, generally they'll guarantee that you get a decision pretty quickly. Very common early action deadlines for colleges these days are November 1st and November 15th. So students and parents, what you're going to see as you go through these finalizing your list of schools is a lot of these schools will either have rolling admissions deadlines where you can apply as soon as possible, or early action or priority deadlines where they encourage you to apply sometime prior to November 15th. So we have this presentation when we do, because that means that, again, over the next 6 or 8 weeks, that's when you're going to be processing and completing the bulk of your college applications. Now, it's not as hard as you might think with the advent of something called the Common App and the Coalition application. Many colleges in the United States take this common application where you put in your demographic information and school information one time, and you can send that information to multiple schools. The list of Common App schools is up to around 1,000. So for a typical West Windsor-Plainsboro North student who's applying to 10 or 12 colleges, you might find that 90% of those schools accept the Common App or the Coalition App, which is a very similar format to the Common App. How can you find out which schools accept Common App and Coalition App? Well, a few ways. Number one, you can look on your Naviance account. When you add colleges that you're interested in or applying to on Naviance, it will let you know what applications they accept. You can also go directly to the Common App or Coalition App website and create an account. And you can take a look at the schools that you're interested in and see which of these applications they accept. Many schools also accept applications directly through their websites. But again, the vast majority of schools that our students apply to do accept the common application. So we find that's a great way for students to keep organized as they go through the process. Keeping track of usernames and passwords, like everything else in life, is really important through the college process. I would absolutely recommend that if you're not the most organized person, that maybe you and your parent share a document that might have a list of schools, deadlines, and as well as usernames and passwords for those different schools. It will make the process, when we talk about making the process easier and cutting down on headaches or stress and anxiety, usernames and passwords and deadlines, that is a really good way to keep things pretty much as simple as possible. So pay attention to those deadlines, save those usernames and passwords, and share all of that information. Again, a simple Google Doc or an app on an iPhone would goes a long way to keeping everything organized. Common App versus Coalition App. What are these things? And I just explained this a little bit. We have links on this screen to Common App member schools and Coalition App member schools. Common App was the original application that multiple schools signed up and decided that they would use years and years ago. Over the past 20 years, it's probably tripled in size from maybe 200 to 300 member schools to almost 1,000 today. Coalition App is much smaller. It's only been around for 6 or 7 years, but really uses the same format and purpose as Common App. And that is for students to fill out one application and be able to send it to member schools. The Coalition app only has about 170 member schools as of right now, but some of those are very popular schools that our students apply to. There are colleges that accept both the Common App and the Coalition app. So a common question that we always get is, which application should I use? If I have a college that accepts Coalition app and Common application and maybe application directly to the school through their website, is there an advantage to applying using one application or another? And the answer to that is a resounding no from the college officials. So look at your entire list of schools and decide which platform you want to use and what makes more sense for you. You might have a situation where you have both a Common App account and a Coalition account, but they pretty much work the same way. And the interface with Naviance, which is the program that we use to send all of these materials from the high school, works seamlessly with both applications. So these really cut down on time filling out forms and applications. So we look forward to having you utilize these platforms to your advantage as you organize yourself this fall. Okay, I'm going to have a couple screenshots from the Common App. There's a link here on the top of this slide. If you haven't yet created a Common App, where you can create one in just a matter of minutes. The first thing you can do when you log on to Common App is fill out the education system, the education section of each application. You don't necessarily have to add colleges, and you certainly can add colleges without applying to the colleges, but there are general information in the education section about your family, your school, your testing, your activities that you can complete now before you submit any applications. We ask you to list High School North, of course, as your high school. You can see our CEB code on the screenshot here. It's 311232. A common question we always get is, what is our senior class size? So we've got the senior class size listed on the slide. GPA scale is 4.0, even though we do give weighted and unweighted GPA to colleges on our transcript. So Common App has a lot of information that you can complete right now. And the education section of the Common application only needs to be completed one time. When you send applications, when you send a Common App application to schools, this same education goes to each of your colleges. So again, a real time saver with Common App. Once you've completed the education section on Common App, you can then, of course, enter schools that you might be interested in. This list can evolve throughout the fall. So in this example here, we have New York University and the College of New Jersey. Just because you list a college on Common App doesn't mean that you can't delete that list or update that list throughout the fall. You can send applications out one at a time. So again, this list can be fluid as you go through the application process. We want to show you the screen where you enter My Colleges, because under college information, you'll see something important called recommenders and FERPA. The first time you add a college to Common App, you have to complete the recommendation and FERPA waiver so that we can send information from the high school, from your teachers, from your counselors to each individual college. You only have to complete the recommender and FERPA waiver for one school, and then that release will apply to every school that you apply to via Common App. So this is just a screenshot of the recommendations and FERPA page. You complete this once, and then it's finished for every school that you add to the dashboard on Common App. All right. You can also invite outside recommenders through the Common App. This is a popular question we get. Of course, students know that many colleges will accept recommendations from counselors as well as one or two academic teachers. But colleges also will often accept an outside recommender to submit a recommendation on a student's behalf. Now, that could be a coach in the building or outside of the building. It could be a member of the clergy. It could be a member of student government organization or another organization that you work with outside of school, someone that could speak to who you are as a person outside of the classroom. So if you have someone in mind that you would like to invite to write for you, we would ask you to use that invitation under other recommenders in Common App and invite those people individually when you get the opportunity. Not all schools have an option to invite outside recommenders. So you will see that invitation come up for each individual school that you add to Common App. So if you have someone in mind, someone that's written for you, you can enter their email under other recommenders, and that will be an additional recommendation along with your academic recommendations from the high school. All right, so there's another screenshot of other recommenders. All right, ED agreements. Now I talked briefly about early action deadlines or rolling admissions deadlines. This simply means that a college, if they receive your application by a certain date, they will try their best to give you a decision by a certain date. Some colleges that you might apply to this fall will have a different application deadline called early decision. Now, early decision is often a binding agreement between the student, the parent, the counselor, and the college. And the agreement states that if the college accepts you, that you are committing 100% to attend that college. So because the early decision agreement is an important one, it's an important contractual agreement, colleges ask that not only students sign off on this agreement, but students invite a parent or guardian to indicate that they have had a discussion with their son or daughter about the college early decision agreement. And counselors also have to sign off that we are aware that you are applying early decision to a school. Now, what are the advantages and disadvantages of applying early decision to a school? The advantages are simply, if you're applying early decision by the early decision deadline, a lot of times your chances of admissions will be slightly higher because the school understands that if they accept you, you're absolutely going. Now, this advantage is going to be smaller or larger depending on each individual school and what percentage of their class that they accept through the early decision deadline. So I would encourage you, students and parents, if this is something that you are considering, to understand what that school's early decision statistics look like. For instance, if that school's early decision acceptance rate is very similar to their other acceptance rates for regular decision or early action, it might not be to your advantage to apply early decision. And that leads into the reason why you wouldn't want to apply early decision to a school. Well, if you're applying to 10 schools and you would get into your early decision school, you have to then decline any acceptances to other schools. You are not allowed to change your mind. This is a binding agreement, and trying to get out of that agreement could have consequences to the student and to the high school. So we ask that if you're considering early decision, students, that you talk to your parents, of course, and you, of course, have a conversation with your counselor, because this is something that you need to be 100% certain about as you go through the process. We also know, students and parents, that this is a huge decision, and you might feel differently about colleges that you're considering in February and March than you do in October and November. This happens all the time. So even though there might be a small advantage to applying early decision to a particular school, that might not outweigh the advantage of getting to take a look at multiple schools in February, March, or April, and ultimately making a decision that is best for you. It might seem, students and parents, that everybody in the senior class of 2023 is applying early decision to at least one school. I can tell you that that is not the case. In any given year, we might have anywhere between 20% and 30% of our senior class that will apply early decision. The vast majority of students do not apply early decision to a school. So again, it's something to consider. It's something to talk about. And there are different facets to be considered when you make that decision. Many of the early decision deadlines are similar to early action deadlines in that they come up between November 1st and November 15th. So you still have some time to consider all of these options. All right, Naviance. Naviance is the platform that we use to process all of your application requests and to send materials electronically directly to all the schools you're applying to. What we enjoy about Naviance is Naviance features the capability to talk with your Common App account. So we have you match your Common App and Naviance accounts so that we can exchange information seamlessly back and forth throughout the process. So as you update information on Common App, a lot of times that information, whether it's colleges or deadlines, will be updated real time in your Naviance account. When we send information to your Common App schools, what we're actually doing is sending information directly through Naviance to the Common App platform. And then that information, even though you can't see it, is sent along with your application whenever you decide to apply to each of your schools. So after you have created your Common App account, signed off on your FERPA waiver on your Common App account, we ask you to log on to your Naviance student account. And under colleges I'm applying to, we ask you to match your Common App and Naviance accounts. That's the first step to allow us to send documents to these schools. So there's a short video on how to do that. You don't have to watch the video. It is as simple as clicking the match button and entering in a password or your birth date, and then we can go from there. Adding colleges in Naviance. Now, you've created a Common App account or you've got a list of colleges that you're applying to. In order for us to send materials from the high school to these colleges electronically, you need to, of course, indicate which colleges you're applying to and what deadline you are considering for these colleges. So we've got 2 embedded videos on this slide, how to add colleges to colleges I'm applying to, and of course, how to edit or delete colleges I'm applying to, because we understand that these lists will be fluid throughout the fall. So you can add colleges to this list tonight or tomorrow, and then you can change deadlines or you can change colleges throughout the application season. Okay. The one thing we ask is that you don't add schools to Naviance colleges until you've added those to your Common App account. And again, that's because these 2 platforms talk to each other, and we can't send anything through Common App to Common App unless it has been added in Naviance. So Common App first, Naviance second. If you see this University of Cal Berkeley computer screen on the slide, Cal Berkeley is a non-Common App school. So for many schools that you add in Naviance, you will see that they don't accept the Common App. But if you see a blue computer screen, it means that they do accept electronic delivery of documents. So we're going to be sending things to, your counselors are going to be sending things to Common App schools and non-Common App schools, really using the same electronic method called eDocs. All right. There is one column here that we would like you to ignore because we don't use this for our sending purposes. There's a transcripts column that will say no request for every school that you add. We don't need you to officially request a transcript because when you add colleges you're applying to, we understand that you were, of course, requesting that transcript. And anything that we send to a college you're applying to will have a transcript that accompanies it automatically. So we don't ask you to, there's an extra step that we could ask you to take that we do not. Adding a college to colleges I'm applying to is asking for your high school transcript and other materials to be sent to schools. Recommendations. We mentioned before that many colleges will accept at least one letter of recommendation from an academic teacher. Some will request multiple or accept multiple letters of recommendation, and they also all accept at least one letter of recommendation from a high school counselor. Because they do that, you have the opportunity to request specific teachers for specific colleges, or you can just make one general request for each of your colleges that says, if I have a teacher writing for me, I want the letter of recommendation to go to all of the colleges I'm applying to. However, we do give you the option to pick and choose which recommendations go to which colleges, because some colleges do only accept one teacher recommendation. Now, you don't have access to view the letter of recommendation that your teacher is writing. However, if you have a college that you're applying to, and maybe you're going to be an engineering major and they only accept one letter of recommendation, we understand that you might want to use a STEM teacher to use their recommendation to submit as your one recommendation to that particular college. So when you add colleges and you request recommendations for each of those colleges, you will have the freedom to just make a general request or specific requests. And again, we've got a video embedded that will describe how to do that. Counselors and teachers like input from you, the student, so that we can write the most informed recommendation possible. Remember, we've had you over a series of years. We might know you in a certain light, but there is more to you than what we might see in the counseling office or in the classroom. So with that in mind, we ask you to complete a counselor recommendation input form or teacher recommendation request prior to us writing and uploading our recommendations. Now, we did ask you to do that in the spring. Different counselors have different deadlines, but all of us ask that you complete this form prior to making a college request. So if you have not completed an counselor recommendation input form yet, you need to do this prior to adding colleges to your active applications list, because we will not process active application requests until the input sheet has been completed. If you have questions about that, you can certainly reach out to your counselor later this week and we'll explain the survey. This survey that you're completing for counselors and teachers, this doesn't have to be perfect prose, perfect college essay style. It can be more conversational. You can use bullet points, whatever you need to do to answer the questions as best you can so that we can write the most informed recommendation possible. So you'll find these input questionnaires under surveys from your school. All right, I've talked a lot, and I'm sure most of you have zoned out at least once. So this slide is to help you kind of focus in on big picture, what we're looking for when it comes to requesting documents from your schools. So number one, we want you to create a Common App account and add colleges to your Common App account or your coalition account. As part of that process, we want you to sign the electronic FERPA waiver in Common App or on Coalition App. If you are applying early decision, you need to sign your early decision agreement as well before we can process applications through the guidance office. So those are three things that you need to do in advance of doing anything in Naviance with requesting transcripts. On Naviance, make sure you've done number 4. If you haven't completed number 4 already, your student input questionnaire, please do that over the coming days. We cannot process anything until you complete that questionnaire. Then number 5 is easy. You're going to match your Common App and Naviance accounts in Naviance, and then you're going to add colleges I'm applying to. Adding colleges I'm applying to is your way of requesting all of your school documents, including our school profile, your transcript, and your counselor recommendation. Everything goes in one neat electronic package to the Common App or directly to non-Common App schools. Okay, so in Naviance, adding colleges I'm applying to and which deadlines you're using is a pretty simple process. We also, for schools that don't accept the Common App, we have our own version of the Common App FERPA waiver. So there's a link to our High School North FERPA waiver on number 7. It's just a simple Google Doc. It takes 2 seconds to complete. We'd just like you to do that once prior to submitting colleges I'm applying to. So that's the transcript request summary that you can refer back to as you go through the process. And I know other counselors have some additional checklists that they might share with you that will really help you to keep organized. This is all an effort to kind of keep you as organized as possible. Now, as if all of that weren't confusing enough, there are some notable exceptions that I'd like to point out. Most schools, again, accept Common App, Coalition App. However, there are some schools that are a little bit different. And because so many of our students from our senior class each year apply to Rutgers, certainly want to point this out. Rutgers is one of several schools now that accept what's called a self-reported academic record. That means in lieu of a high school transcript in the fall, they ask you to self-report your grades through a separate website called the SRAR. So the Rutgers application for that reason is pretty easy. They don't really require anything from High School North. You'll go on and complete their application directly through the Rutgers website or through Coalition app. After you finish the Rutgers application, you will input your grades through their SRAR portal, and then you're done. You'll get a decision within 4 to 6 weeks. Now, some of you might be thinking, if I'm self-reporting my grades, aren't we all going to get into Rutgers? Couldn't I just report whatever I want? Well, not exactly. If you end up attending a school that accepts a self-reported academic record, and these are schools like Rutgers, Penn State, University of Pennsylvania, there are a lot of schools out there that ask you to self-report grades directly into their portal. If you end up attending any of these schools, they are going to want an official final transcript from High School North at the end of the year. And if you end up attending Rutgers at the end of the year, your final transcript better match what you turned in on your SRAR. So Rutgers has self-reported grades, but make sure that those grades match your grades in Genesis from your first 3 years of high school. A lot of times the SRAR can be a little bit confusing for students, so certainly stop by your counselor's office if you have specific questions about the format of the self-reported academic record. Another school that probably we get 20 or 30 applicants out of our senior class apply to Georgetown each year. And Georgetown really is one of those schools that is, I'll use the phrase high maintenance in terms of their expectations. So Georgetown doesn't really like to use the Naviance platform, electronic delivery. They really like to use their own Georgetown application. Because we have so many students apply directly to Georgetown each year, we make a special exception in terms of how we send documents electronically. If you are going to be applying to Georgetown and you fill out their application, you can list your teacher recommenders and your counselor in the Georgetown application, and they will send us a link directly, and we will upload your high school materials directly to their platform. Now, Georgetown is the only school that we do this for. Almost every other school that we work with accepts everything directly through Common App or through Naviance via our electronic delivery. Again, Georgetown is the one exception. So we do this with Georgetown really to make it easier on students. So if you have any questions about the Georgetown application, certainly you can speak to your counselor. You'll find that it's pretty simple. One thing I haven't talked about as we go through this whole process is college assessments. Now, college assessments and how schools value those assessments has changed dramatically over the past several years. There has been a longer 10, 20-year trend of moving away from the importance of college, how colleges view standardized tests like SAT and ACT. But really, this was accelerated over the COVID years of 2020 and 2021, where many of our seniors in the classes of 2021, 2022 did not have ample opportunity to take standardized tests. I know that that hasn't necessarily been as much of an issue for the class of 2023, but I'm happy to report that many of these schools nationwide are remaining test optional for the foreseeable future. And test optional simply means you have the option to send them standardized test scores if you want to or not. If you don't send schools a standardized test score, they will simply evaluate your application based on your other academic information and everything else that you have submitted. Now, this can sound a little bit confusing on the surface. So students, if you have questions about test optional schools and your particular situation, your standardized test scores, and whether you should submit or not submit, we can give you our best advice. There's no real written rule in terms of should I submit or not, or should I not submit, but it can be a little bit nuanced. Also, you can always reach out to the schools directly if you have a question about test optional, because different schools have different policies. But again, as you can see from the slide, more than 1,600 schools out of 4,000 nationally are now test optional, which I think is a wonderful thing. More test optional schools we have, the more opportunity schools have to do what's called holistic review, which is really looking at a student beyond just a few academic benchmarks and really look at the candidate in terms of their personality, their interests, and everything else that would make them a valued member of the campus community. AP exam scores. This is a common question we get as well. If you took an AP exam during sophomore year or junior year, is this a part of the admissions process? And the answer to that is generally no. AP exam scores are not a part of the admissions process like ACT scores or SAT scores. There are many reasons for this. A lot of reasons are AP exams for many students take place during the spring of their senior year, and it's hard to really compare one candidate to the other when some candidates are taking AP exams junior year, some candidates are taking AP exams senior year. However, the best part of AP exam scores is if many colleges offer credit for certain exam scores, which let's say a 3 or a 4 or a 5. So AP exam scores are a part of the application process, but generally you can send in those scores toward the end of senior year, and you don't necessarily have to release those scores to colleges during the fall of your senior year. With that said, some college applications will ask you to self-report your AP exam scores, and you're certainly free to do so. If you've taken 3 or 4 AP exams and you've received 4s or 5s on those exams, and you feel like that's going to put you in a better light in terms of your application, you can certainly do that. But the overarching, what I want you to understand is that for the most part, the AP exam scores are not part of the admissions process. And students who don't submit test scores as part of this process in the fall are not really going to be at a disadvantage from everything that we have heard from college representatives across the country. Okay, so I went over the checklist, talked a little bit about test scores. Here's the summary of kind of what's going and who's doing what and what you need to keep on top of. Now, if we remember all the way back to the first or second slide, one of the best things you can do in this process is keep organized. So keep track of passwords and deadlines, and you can do that with a parent. But also students, you are the captains of the ship. So even though school counselors and teachers have a role, your parents may have a role, you need to be aware of everything that's going on so that the process works and everything gets to where it needs to be on time. So the school counselors, of course, play an important role in getting your recommendations, your transcripts, your secondary school report, and your school profile off to each of these schools. Once you add a school to your active applications list and you complete your FERPA waiver and match your Naviance and Common App accounts and do all that, we will be able to send all of this information directly to your schools. So that's our part. You're also going to indicate when you're adding applications in Naviance which teachers you want to send recommendations for you. It's also important for you to communicate with your key teachers directly. Don't just communicate electronically. Teachers are very busy in the fall. They're just as busy as you are. So doing these recommendations for you, for teachers that are teaching juniors especially, is a huge endeavor. So I would ask that if you did ask a teacher in June or July and you want to send them a reminder, that you might take an extra minute or two just to stop by their room and see them and just kind of let them know what's going on and let them know when your first college deadline is coming up. They'll be able to see that, of course, on Naviance, but a face-to-face conversation or personal email would be great. And just to fast forward through the latter stages of this process, once you start getting admissions decisions to these schools, I highly encourage that you reach out to your counselors and your teachers to let them know the good news and to let them know what's going on. Because again, some of our teachers are writing 20 or 30 recommendations for colleges in addition to preparing for all of their classes throughout September, October. So this is a really busy process for them as well. So make sure your teachers are in the loop. What is your job? Your job, of course, is to send your applications electronically directly to colleges, to request those teacher recommendations, and to send your SAT or ACT scores, if you are doing so, directly to colleges. We do not include SAT or ACT scores on your high school transcript. So you have to log into your College Board account or your ACT account and send score reports to each college that you're applying to. Now, this is not a difficult process. You don't have to do it after you've applied to a school. You can go on once sometime in the next week or two and do that. If you've just taken SAT, you can go on your College Board account and send all of your score reports all at once. You can do the same thing with ACT. So it's not a complicated step, but it's an important one, because a lot of schools, if they do require standardized test scores, they won't evaluate your application until they get those scores. And it generally takes 2 to 3 weeks for those schools to arrive electronically and be uploaded by the colleges. Everyone, students, counselors, teachers, and I will add parents, are working at the same time, sending materials to the college by the deadlines noted. Again, if organization is not your strongest suit, then spend a little bit of time with the folks at home, mom or dad, just to talk a little bit about how best to keep organized. And using Naviance, that platform, is a really simple way to keep organized, because once you enter in active applications on Naviance, you'll be able to see all of your deadlines right there in front of you. Some important reminders. Complete your, I've said this 3 or 4 times. I think you're getting the impression by now that we really want to see that counselor input survey in Naviance. Complete counselor and teacher recommendation surveys in Naviance prior to adding colleges. If you've added colleges already and you haven't completed your input sheet, please do that within the next couple of days. Okay, your counselors aren't going to be sending out things over the next week, but we will start to do that very soon. So make sure your input sheet is complete so that we are not chasing you around the building. Colleges should be added in Naviance at least 3 weeks prior to your earliest deadline. You may absolutely add transcript requests before you submit your applications. So if you've got an October 15th deadline for a particular college, go ahead and add that in Naviance today. Our materials can be sent to colleges prior to you even sending your application. So that is not a big deal at all. But we counselors need plenty of notice so that we can write your recommendation and get all these things together. 3 weeks might seem like a lot of time to you. You might be thinking, how in the world does Mrs. Pyle or Mrs. Riley need 3 weeks to write my recommendation? Well, they don't need 3 weeks to write your recommendation. However, if they simultaneously receive 40 requests for college applications and recommendations, they want to take time to make sure that everything is in perfect order. And you would not want them to write 40 recommendations in a day or two. So we ask for plenty of time in advance of those deadlines. Get in those requests. If you have October 15th schools, get those in over the next week or two. And of course, most everybody on this call is going to have November 1st deadlines. Once we have written a college recommendation for you, additional requests are pretty easy to process. So that first earliest deadline, that's really what we focus on in Naviance. So if you've got October 15th, please make that request over the coming days. Okay. Again, add colleges to Common App and make sure your Common App colleges match what you've got in Naviance. If you're applying early decision in Common App, make sure you and your parents sign off on the early decision agreement, because we can't sign off or process anything on our end until you process that early decision agreement. Very important. Final thoughts. College visits. Did you know that on any given day in room 101 at 3 o'clock after school, we have college representatives from probably 40 or 50 different schools that are visiting High School North just to give information and sometimes to meet applicants. We have a running list of colleges that are visiting in person and virtually in Naviance. Very easy to access. You can sign up for these visits in advance. We've got we've got Zoom sessions if it's a virtual visit, which about 25% of the visits are virtual. Those will take place generally at 3:30 p.m. So that you have time to get home on the bus or drive home. And again, the in-person visits are right after school at 3 o'clock. So if you drive to school, it's easy to stay for an in-person visit if you've got a car. If not, you can take a 4 o'clock late bus. If a school is visiting the high school and they are on your list and it's a school that you're very interested in, we would of course highly encourage you for you to take the time to meet with that representative. In many cases, representatives from small schools that visit our high school are the first ones that read your application. And so what a wonderful opportunity to place a face to a name and to make a good impression with these folks that are taking the time to come to school. So college visits, we absolutely encourage you to take advantage of that. To change course a little bit, dropping a class. We understand that 99% of schedules are now set in stone, and we do that for a reason. Dropping a class after you send out transcripts is discouraged. So if you are struggling in a class, if you have talked with your counselor about a possible level change, and we do have a small window of time over the next 2 weeks where students can request a level change in maybe a class where they're having difficulty, we encourage you to speak with your counselor and get that worked out prior to sending out transcript requests. The reason being is if you end up sending a transcript in the fall that doesn't match a final transcript that you send in the spring, that can be problematic for some of your schools. So we want you to feel comfortable in the classes that you're currently in. If you're struggling in a class, please see your counselor. But if there's a possibility even of you dropping a class, have a conversation with your counselor, and we certainly want to do that in advance of sending out any transcript. This is looking ahead a few months, but did you know that many schools want to see your mid-year grades just to see how you're doing in the classes in which you're enrolled? Your initial application will of course have your courses in progress. So colleges will see in October and November which courses you're taking, but they won't see any grades. In February, you'll have the opportunity, early February, to share your mid-year grades with these schools. And if a school hasn't made a decision yet, this could have a very positive impact on your application decision. So if you're looking at schools and you see a mid-year grade request form or someone mentions mid-year grades, that's what we're talking about. So in mid-January, we'll send a reminder to students to give us a list of any schools that they want us to send mid-year grades to. Did you know that we have a class of 2023 Google Classroom, a general counseling department Google Classroom? So this is not your individual counselor's Google Classroom. This is a Google Classroom just for the class of 2023 from the counseling office. And we use this to post general information like this PowerPoint presentation or urgent information that might come up regarding graduation or other things throughout the school year. I've got the join code listed on the screen. As of tonight, we have about 150 of our 370 seniors that are members of this classroom. That's good, but it's not great. So our goal is to get to 100% participation on this Google Classroom. I promise that we will not post things endlessly on this Google Classroom, but what we do post is going to be important and it's going to be relevant to all of you. So take a few moments in the next few days to join this Google Classroom. Again, if I have sufficiently bored you or confused you, my colleagues will be holding question and answer sessions over the next few days, later this week for most of us, into early next week, to answer questions and answers that I might not have answered in the general presentation. We understand that everybody's journey is really unique, and the process and the background for everybody is unique. Maybe you're new to the school system this year. Maybe you're a first-generation college applicant. Everybody's got their own story that really informs conversations. So this, and by no means, is a substitute for the individual conversations that we will be having with our counseling cohorts throughout the fall. We don't want to, of course, we want to share this general information once, and of course, we want you to be familiar with what's on the PowerPoint. But if you have questions in addition to that, we want you to bring these to your counselors. And we also understand that you are not bugging us if you see us and you stop by our office for 5 different 2-minute visits over the course of a 3 or 4 week period. That's what happens throughout the college application season. You're going to come to us with 2 or 3 questions, and then 3 days later, you're going to have 2 or 3 other questions that you need answered. And we are there to answer that for you. We're available during most of the student lunch period. certainly available during most study halls. And you can reach out to us via Google Chat and or email, whatever is most convenient between you and your counselor to really get those small questions answered. There's no question that is too inconsequential. So really, if we're here to do nothing else, it's to really answer those small questions and to walk you through the process. Two more things we want you to be aware of. And the first one is related to college reps. We're having our college fair again on October 13th this year. If you went to last year's fair, it was wonderful. It's going to be once again held at High School North from 6 to 8 p.m. We're using a new software platform this year called strivefair.com. The QR code is, of course, here on the screen. This will allow you to share information with different colleges that are at the college fair. So for the parents out there that attended college fairs 20 or 30 years ago, we're trying to get away from filling out information over and over again on postcards and instead sharing information electronically. So this is the first year that we're going to be using the Strive app, and we think it's going to make the college fair even cooler. The college fair is designed for juniors and seniors. Kids can come by themselves. We welcome parents as well if you want to come with a parent. And again, it's going to be at High School North between 6 and 8 p.m. on 10/13. Last slide. Financial aid. Boy, is that the elephant in the room. We're spending all this time talking about all these colleges you're going to apply to. And of course, I've neglected to tell you how much these colleges cost. So I won't get into that tonight, but college is expensive. However, there are a lot of ways, things that you can utilize to make college more affordable. In fact, we have an entire state agency in New Jersey called the Higher Education Student Assistance Authority that is dedicated to helping parents and students navigate the financial aid process. They have a lot of virtual workshops that are going on throughout the school year. So we've listed this on the screen. The most common workshops have to do with FAFSA completion. If you haven't heard of FAFSA before, it's the free application for federal student aid. For any student that wants to apply for any type of financial aid during the college process, your parent has to complete a FAFSA form where you list the student information, the financial information from last year, along with parent financial information. That form opens up on October 1st, and it will remain open throughout the fall and winter. Most colleges want you to complete a FAFSA by January to February. So HESA, as we call them, holds virtual FAFSA completion workshops throughout the fall. And there are different materials that they have on their websites. You can see different, HESA, again, is a great organization. As financial organizations go, they are very helpful, especially as compared to the federal government versus state government. So they have a lot of programs going on, great loan programs and rates, and they will cover all of these in their different presentations. So we include that slide more for parents so that you can get a jump on understanding the financial aid process. Mrs. Gould, I have talked quite a bit. Do you have anything that you'd like me to answer? Anything that either you've seen in the chat or something that you're thinking of, maybe from last night's presentation or last year's presentation, that I might not have addressed?
Thank you, Mr. Riley, for the lots of information. I know that I'm sure that there are specific questions that parents have and also students might have. And those are best, I think, directed towards their individual counselors rather than this type of a setting. But if you have a general question, please post it in the chat now, and we'll try to get to some of the questions. There were a few questions about talking a little bit about community colleges and what the benefits or the process might be for applying to community colleges. And then they also wanted to know a little bit more about the benefits or drawbacks of early decision or early action. And
Sure.
if you could just specify the differences between the two.
Sure, absolutely. When we talk about college admissions, I'm including community colleges in all of these discussions. So our closest community college is Mercer County We have kids attend Mercer County and Middlesex County community colleges each year. You can attend a 2-year community college and earn an associate's degree in a lot of different areas. You can also earn your associate's degree and then transfer your credits for that first 2 years of community college to 4-year schools throughout the nation. And this includes some of the most competitive 4-year schools, private and public institutions in the country. So I personally have had past students that have started their college careers at Mercer County Community College, and then they've gone on to different state schools, from the College of New Jersey to Rutgers to elite private schools like NYU. And my most famous example always is Harvard. Yes, I had a student start at Mercer County and end up in a medical program at Harvard. So really, community college can be an awesome start for students that maybe just need a little bit more time in terms of their academic maturity, or that want to be a little bit more savvy in terms of the affordability of college. Just briefly, back to financial aid. Some of the private liberal arts schools cost $80,000 or $90,000 now. Mercer County Community College can cost $3,000 to $5,000 a year. And for families whose adjusted gross income is below, I believe, $65,000, Mercer County and Middlesex County are free. They cost $0. So you could go to school for 2 years, have 60 college credits, start at Rutgers or the College of New Jersey as a junior, before you pay $1 of college tuition. So I do not want to sell those two opportunities short. We will have probably 20 to 30 members of this year's senior class start off at a 2-year school. And we have some of our best outcomes academically and financially utilizing that path. We have great relationships with the counseling team and the admissions team over at Mercer. So if you're interested in tours, workshops, anything like that, talk to your counselor, and we can give you direct contact information for that. A little more early decision versus early action, because the two terms do sound very similar. So when you're looking at deadlines, the difference between early decision and early action is early decision is almost always a binding agreement where you have to commit to a school if you are accepted. Whereas early action simply means if you apply by the early action deadline, you will receive a decision sooner rather than later. For instance, Rutgers has an early action deadline most years, and I'm not sure about this year, but generally it's a priority or early action deadline of around December 1st. If you get the application into Rutgers by December 1st, they promise to give you a result by February 1st. Excuse me. If you wait longer than that, your decision from Rutgers might come later in the spring. And for schools that are admitting students throughout the fall, it does get a little bit harder and more challenging to get accepted if you apply later in the winter. So that's the difference between early action and early decision. I'll throw one curveball to the audience, because there are still a few schools out there that have something called restrictive early action. And that's just an example of colleges like Georgetown that are just out there to confuse people. So restrictive early action, whether it's Georgetown or Princeton, there's a few Ivy League schools that still have it. That's kind of a hybrid in between early action and early decision. It's a binding agreement, but it's not as binding as an early decision agreement. Basically, my suggestion would be read the fine print. If you see restrictive early action or early decision, they will explain exactly what that means. If you have questions, of course, talk to your counselor.
And I would say the same thing when you're talking about whether school is test optional or not. It's really important that you not only look at the school's website, but the specific program that you might be wanting to enter into. So for example, some students are test optional, but they are not for particular programs. For instance, like if you wanted to enter an engineering program in a school, that particular department may not be test optional, whereas the rest of the university is. So it's really important to take a look at that as well when you're making those decisions, and talk with your counselor about whether or not to send your scores There were a couple of questions on, if you send the scores to one school, do you have to send to all of the schools? And the answer to that is no. You can select which schools you report your scores to and which ones you do not. There was also a question about class rank. We do not have class rank in WWP, although, colleges have their own sort of system for weighting students' academic progress and the courses that they've taken. And the reason why they do that is because, they're looking at transcripts from schools in Texas and Florida and California, and, applicants are coming from everywhere, where weighting is done differently and how things are scored is done differently. In some schools, they use numerical numbers to report grades, whereas, some schools use A, B, some have A minus. And so in order for them to, level out and really compare students' academic progress, they use their own system for rating the grades. And so therefore we don't have a class rank.
Right.
There were some questions about teacher recommendations in Naviance, and if you could talk a little more about that process.
Sure. Luckily, all of our teachers that write recommendations use the Naviance platform, simply because it's very easy for them to upload and send their information directly to schools. With that said, not all of our teachers use the teacher recommendation input form in Naviance. That's kind of a generic form that we created in the counseling office for kids to answer questions that teachers could use in their recommendations. So what I would say to students, if you're asking a particular teacher for a recommendation, you can ask them whether they would like you to complete the teacher recommendation survey in Naviance, or if they have their own survey that they would like you to complete. It really depends on the teacher, but that doesn't affect how teachers utilize the Naviance platform. So kids can request teachers through Naviance, and teachers will upload and send those materials regardless of what they accept in terms of recommendation questionnaires.
Can you talk a little bit about the process of what happens if it's somebody outside of the WWP network, whether it's, a religious leader in the community or somebody else? How do those recommendations?
Sure. So that again would be under Common App, they call it Other Recommender. And basically how a student would have someone submit that recommendation on their behalf is they would send them an email invite through Common App. So let's use, for example, the College of New Jersey. If you're on the Common App website and you list the College of New Jersey as one of your colleges, under that FERPA and recommenders screen, you will see Other Recommender listed if they accept an outside recommendation in addition to teacher recommendations. If you click on Other Recommender, and I've got that screenshot in the PowerPoint, you would then enter the email address of the person that is going to be writing for you, whether that be clergy or community service organization, or simply a club advisor from North. What that will do is that will prompt that teacher or other adult to get an email invitation from Common App, and then they can upload for that particular school. So they would have to do that with each individual school that accepts other recommendations. I saw another, again, requesting transcripts. Again, requesting transcripts, your transcript automatically goes to any college that you add to Colleges I'm Applying To. You don't have to specifically request the transcript. By adding a college to Colleges I'm Applying To, that is you requesting a transcript. I'd like to take 2 seconds just to thank 3 of our counselors, Melissa Demuth, Chelsea Godowski, Maria Pyle, that are typing as fast as they can in the chat. So thank you for certainly for helping out this evening.
You just took the words out of my mouth, Mr. Riley. I was just about to do the same thing. And also thank you to all of the students and families that are on tonight who were able to attend. I know that this is only the beginning of the work and the partnership that you will have with your school counselors. If you have any individual questions, if you have, anything that you're working through that you're not sure how to navigate, please don't hesitate to reach out to your counselor. I know that there are meetings coming up as well for counselors to meet with seniors to talk about this process a little bit more in depth, and also to answer any particular questions that might come up. So if your question wasn't answered tonight, don't worry, you'll have a chance to have that question answered in the future. As well, this presentation will be posted online. So if you want to watch it again, or you want to just hear some of the answers to the questions, please feel free to take a look tomorrow at our district website, and it will be posted there as a resource for families and for students as well. And good luck on the journey, and just to remember to stay the course, and really just to remain calm that it's going to happen, and that everyone does have their own individual journey. And every student will find their path. And so really trust that, and rely and partner with your counselors, because that's what they're here for, to support you. Take care, everyone.
Have a
Good
good
night.
night. Thank you.